I was just asking the audience here if they know of anyone that has relationship difficulties. And there was a great deal of noise and a lot of people saying nod, nod and hands up, and I think it's everywhere. I mean, you look at marriages now, there's what, 1.5 of marriages now are broken up, and you only have to look at the paper. The world's in a bit of a mess in a lot of places, hey? But the wonderful thing is when we have the tools that I have learned over years and the keys to begin to apply to when anything goes wrong in a relationship, what to do about it, so it can be constructive and so that I can learn, and more than I can learn, I can also begin to apply what I've learned and see the extraordinary change not in me as well as, but also the person I'm having the difficulties with. So it gets exciting. So my hope is you come to that place one day when you apply even one of these things that I'm going to share today, wherever you are having relationship difficulties with yourself or with others at work, at home, when you begin to apply it, watch and see what happens. So it becomes an adventure. It becomes exciting. Whereas before it used to make me feel very depressed. Anyone has ever felt a bit low and depressed when relationships are in a real hole and you don't know what to do with them because you can't change them, and you feel so powerless and helpless, and you think, where am I going to go with this? What can I do? I've done all I know how to do. Anyone felt like that here?
Yes. Yes.
And you almost go to a place of despair. Yeah. So I've been there, and I'm so with you in that. But I'm saying you need no longer ever feel helpless, but rather enabled and empowered today if you apply even one of these things that I share with you today. But as I was preparing for this Transforming Relationships seminar, I thought I would go over the material I've done before, but in there's a lot of what I call practical keys. And you can't take them all in at once. If I just sort of read them off to you, it would be boring. B, you would get indigestion. And in the end you just want to go to sleep and nod off. Because you just can't take it in. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what I feel came to me right now in this state of my life. And then go from these 3 areas, from ourselves personally, how we can get ourselves sorted with the help of the one who created us, even if you don't believe. Most atheists, most people believe in something, by the way. I've met people from all backgrounds, and they've said to me, and I'm just pausing for a moment to explain this, and they'll say to me, I don't believe in God or Jesus, or I don't believe in anything, really. And I said, oh, what about truth? Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I believe in truth. What about love? Oh yeah, I believe in love. And I'll say, why don't we just talk about letting love lead us? So we'll talk about love leading us today, because I don't know who's watching, and I don't know who's listening, I don't know what your backgrounds are, and I don't know how many people have been hurt using religious terminology. So we'll talk about unconditional love as a spirit of love, okay? Spirit of truth. As far as I'm concerned. So number 1, we'll be looking at how you are with yourself. How do you get present to yourself? How do you get clear? With the help of, and that begins to connect again back to where Adam and Eve were, where they separated and became independent. We're coming back to be dependent upon wisdom and love and truth, and getting not only our insight from what the world has given us, but also the insight of wisdom and love and truth, unconditional love. And then thirdly, we'll look at how that profoundly impacts other people's lives, and how profoundly you'll find yourself changed in the presence of other people who used to, maybe still do, make you feel very frightened, intimidate you, where you feel you don't have a voice, where you feel powerless, all of those things. I had all of that with many, many people and authority figures. And it doesn't happen anymore. All those circumstances that I kept on attracting no longer come to me. It just is not there. And one of the team members came to me this morning and said, oh my gosh, she is now moved to this state from going from getting in touch with herself under the guidance of wisdom and love, reconnecting and becoming dependent on this wisdom, and then noticing how profoundly her relationship she had all sorts of problems with that just were insurmountable. You could do nothing, but how profoundly she is now in the presence of that person, and how at peace she is, and how even she's beginning to be influenced just by the way she's being, instead of her getting on it and in it and being caught up in the ring. Do you know what I mean by that? Yeah. In the game, yeah. And then you're gone and you tear each other apart, you know, or you want to tear each other apart, or you swallow it and become depressed. Do you get that? Does that speak to anyone here? Yeah. I've been everywhere, man, it seems. On the emotional scale, on relationships from when I was a little girl, right the way through. So that's why I'm here today. I'm speaking from years of experience. Years of horrible experience. Years of beautiful experience too, because there's been good, light and dark in my life. But also experiencing a wonderful transformation. So, how can you be present and really loving in a relationship with anyone if you don't like yourself?
You can't.
What are you offering them? And in my experience of working with people for years now, I have discovered it's extraordinarily common where people, or a part of them, hates themselves, or hates the fat part of them, or hates feeling weak, or hates feeling powerless, or just doesn't want to look at that aspect of them that is, they don't like. So they're actually in denial of the weaker side of them. And that the truth is, in my experience, and the experience of all the hundreds of people who've come, it's actually in their weakness. And in that space of weakness, when you actually about turn and look at it, and you explore the feelings and the beliefs, and you listen, the profound truth and change comes. So that weakness becomes a gift. That part of you that, well, does anyone here get fearful in front of people or circumstances that are going on in their life and they think, I don't know what's going to happen and where I'm going to be left? Mm-hmm. So you go back to, how do I feel? As a result of what's going on in my life, and it's in the book, Peace, Presence, Power. How do I feel? This is about honouring yourself, but you do not, well, from my perspective, do it on your own head level. Because you can trick yourself, you can manipulate yourself, you can be of different minds and different memories that can come up. So I would always go, and this is where the reconnecting to being dependent upon wisdom and love and truth. And I often say to people, you've got nothing to lose but something to gain. Why not give it a go? So I ask wisdom and truth and love, spirit, to show me what am I feeling as a result of the situation in my life. And I let all the feelings come up. What other feeling do I have? What other feeling? I'm angry, resentful, hateful. I want to murder them. Heard that plenty of times. And I never owned this stuff once, but it's so good to get it up and out. It's very, very healing. And then I discover, what am I believing in that? It always goes back to, oh, I'm feeling like nothing, it's my fault, I'm responsible, I'm bad, I'm nothing. It's amazing, and we're all, usually on a head level, prior to asking for help, run from that weaker part of us and run away from it. In fact, that's where the answer is. That's where your power, you'll experience power. When you experience the truth, you experience a presence. Where those who were present at the seminar heard earlier on with Mary, how dark she felt in areas of her mind or body, and how as we invited the spirit of love in, how profoundly that changed and how secure and safe that quickly. It was like, what? This can't happen like that. But you know, the one who created the whole of the universe is in every atom. And we're all just atoms, and it's constantly in flux. He can change anything at any time, but he will not do that unless we ask. Stop and ask and listen. Ask, what am I feeling? Listen, what am I thinking? Because your thinking will control your life. Ask again and again. That's what I've had to do with myself and all of those other people who have come to me and to other team members in Agape Encounter who are stuck, trapped, powerless, whatever. Usually in that, not always, you'll find, do you like yourself or not? And I'll just ask the Spirit of Truth, say, do they like or not like themselves? Not for any judgment or condemnation, just to bring it to the light. No, I don't like myself. I hate myself. I hate that part of me. And so therefore they stay double-minded and they stay divided. Or have you ever noticed that lots of people, Marilyn Monroe I'll use as an example, what reached the heights of notoriety? Didn't she reach the heights of whatever in her profession? And many other people who reached the heights of. But when you take away the glamour, you take away the money, you take away the relationships, and often they'll gain the world but they'll lose themselves. Finally you take that they feel like alone and powerless and empty. Empty is so common. So I just invite people in that emptiness to just drift into it under the guidance of wisdom and truth always. And listen to the feelings and belief in that part. And they encounter, what would truth say? What would wisdom say? What would justice? A lot of people want justice because they've been abused unfairly. And I'm going to take you through another thing that we get stuck on is anger. A lot of people have anger at themselves and anger at people. Now all of that, what I call is a clog. If you imagine a pillowcase and you just flow water through a pillowcase, what would it come out as? Clear water, what would it come out as?
Dirty water.
If you use clear water and you pour it on top of a clean pillowcase, what would it come out as?
Cloudy water.
Clean water. You're trying to think ahead of me. No, if you pour, think about this, you pour clear water through something and it comes out as clear water. Now you add to that water judgment, hatreds, criticism, doubt, anger, resentment, etc., etc. It's all in the book. What do you think if you pour that into that clean pillowcase, which is part of you, what's that going to do? What's it going to come out like? What do you think the water is? The water going to be as clean?
No.
It's going to be clouded. It's going to be dark. If you remember that these things clog you so you can't hear, so you can't see, because you're too lost in your mind. Instead of going back humbly, as I had to many years ago, and realised I couldn't do it. I couldn't have the healthiest children because I was going to do it all, and everything I was going to do, which is pride in a sense, the opposite happened. So what did that do? It woke me up. It woke me up to go, I need some help. I came back to wisdom. I came back to asking. I humbled myself. I came back to listening, asking, listening, and responding to that. And my life began to change. So, I have to ask you a question. How many of you like yourselves? Every part of you. You don't have to answer that, but answer it with yourself. Do you like every little bit of you? You don't have to like the things you do. You can hate what you have done. Remember, you can hate things or what you've done, but you're meant to love yourself, and love loves unconditionally. Wisdom, truth, unconditional loves you unconditionally. It never changes. But what do? You start hating, judging, criticising. Clog, 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 dirt, 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 stuffed up, can't hear, can't see. Running around in circles, confused because we're trying to sort it, because we are only on our own. But to sort us, we need to go back and ask for a bit of divine, what I call him is the wonderful counsellor, the divine counsellor, help. Whenever I'm off key, in the meantime I just live asking him for his love to flow through me, to me and through me. And I've got to tell you a beautiful little story. This is how powerful this is when you get unclogged and you allow the spirit of love, who lives in you in life, because otherwise you wouldn't be breathing, he's giving you life every second. If you allow that to flow through and you ask for that to flow through you, it touches everything in your life. And our whole business is about unclogging and then training up people in the way to go. That really change. I know it changes, profoundly changes relationships. And if the relationships, the other good news is if relationships don't change, who cares? Because you can't make other people love or like you, can you?
No.
So what does that make you feel when you're no longer trapped in a relationship where you're wanting somebody to love you, or you're wanting a boss to do something, or you're wanting a family member to do something? What does that leave you feeling?
Rejected.
What else? Frustrated, rejected.
Powerless.
Pardon?
Free to love with no strings.
No, but we're looking at the opposite now. When you can't get what you want, when somebody won't love you and something might happen, we're looking at that first, because you've always got to, I'm awfully sorry, but you do have to look at the weak part and the negative part.
Hopeless.
Hopeless. So it leaves you, when you are what I call, they're like strings to something or someone, and you're wanting that to make you feel better about yourself. You remember the dynamic this morning, that person was waiting for someone and she was trapped and she was becoming more resentful and more bitter because that someone else wasn't changing. Does that have to happen? No. She just needs to deal with herself. That's probably enough on herself. What do you reckon? But you get the impression, does that encourage you to unclog? Does that encourage you to deal with yourself first?
Yes.
But not with yourself. Now remember, if you start being your own counsellor and part of you hates yourself, how are you going to go?
Not far.
I think you're going to get very stuck. Because you're down in the dark and the grey and it's not a nice space. So you always ask, for those who don't believe in the word God, and I understand entirely, or Jesus, or whatever else, you ask truth, wisdom, love. The spirit of wisdom, truth, love. Justice. What would you say? What would you say? You heard Miri, how she was transformed from darkness to light. So simply. So that's about yourself. Do you realise why it's important for you to get clear? And something I say to people often is, how fair is it? Really get this. Really get this. How fair is it for you to want other people to love and acknowledge you if you don't do it to yourself? You're asking them to do something, and you may already be getting that anyway. But I'm saying, is that really fair? For you to expect them to love you while you don't love yourself? And for you to demand acknowledgement at work or whatever else? You gentlemen, where is it in your situation? Is it fair for you to ask for something there if you already are stuck and clogged up? So we'll do a little tiny weeny exercise before we finish so that you can get unclogged. Would you like that?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe we might do it now. What if we do it now? Because we can get unclogged and then you can hear better. Much better when you haven't got this in your ears. Or you're not like that. Because this really does unveil. Because I remember one guy coming to me and saying, there was a situation in his life and went back to a memory. We dealt with the feelings and the beliefs. He encountered a presence and a light. A lot of people just encounter presence and light, but they're free and secure. And then you can go anywhere and you can flourish and you can make mistakes and you don't feel judged. When he encountered, he went and he said, I've got to go outside, I've got to go outside. I said, why is that? He said, because everything looks different. Because he was no longer seeing through the filter of darkness and trauma of what he had as a child. But it was lifted off and he was just going, it's so light. He went out and looked at the greenery outside and everything looks greener than it was before. So you begin to see differently because your inner eyes are cleared up. Because your spirit controls everything, really. And then your mind and your emotions. And then your body is the last receptacle. If your body's stuffed a bit in some area, please attend to it. Usually it relates to the way you're treating yourself. Okay, let's do that little exercise. You ready for some fun? Okay. Okay, I was going to do it with others because this is on relationships, but we're going to do it with yourself. We're going to make it quite quick because it doesn't need to be very long. And again, you don't need to do anything but become the observer. Stand back from yourself and allow your mind to become like a television screen. Is that all right? And allow wisdom, truth, love, whoever you believe in here, because to me that is all one and the same, the Creator. So allow Him to guide this. Is that all right?
Yes.
So I'm going to ask Him, this is just to clear away some debris before we go on to the second and the third. And then your relationships externally will just begin to change when you get clear. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, if that's okay. And I'm asking you to stand back, let go of control for a moment, and just allow truth and love and wisdom, unconditional love, to show you a picture of yourself. Now look at yourself in your mind's eye. I'm going to ask the Spirit of wisdom or love to bring yourself before you. And I ask you to look at yourself. And as you look at yourself, as you are now, I'm going to ask the Spirit of wisdom and truth and love. How do you feel about yourself when you look at yourself? Now let wisdom and love show you what you're feeling. When you look at yourself, tell yourself how you feel about yourself. You know, whether you feel disgusted or resentful, or look at yourself and be honest. I'm going to ask you, Spirit of Truth, what do they feel about themselves? Particularly the weaker part of themselves. Every feeling of resentment, hatred, anger, rejection, judgment, maybe it might be love. Whatever it comes to you, sense it. Now speak to yourself as though you're another person. And tell yourself what you feel as a result of what you have done or not done. And be honest, this is a time of unclogging. To speak to that picture of yourself and tell that part of you what you're feeling and what you're thinking as a result of what they've done or what they haven't done. Like, you've made me feel hopeless, or you've made me feel useless, it's your fault, you're responsible. They're the sort of things that can be relevant. Only take it on if it is. I hate you, you're too fat. I loathe you because you're a failure, you're useless. Now, I'm asking you to look at this and do this because we're going to disappear it. Is that okay? It's going to dissolve. So that's the end of it. So look at it, because if it is there, if it's not there, don't take it on. Keep looking at yourself and seeing if you like or dislike yourself. Now, if you need to give yourself, this is a way of getting rid of anger. It's fantastic. When you look at yourself, I'm going to ask the Spirit of Truth, would you like to give yourself a big shake? What would you like to do to yourself? This is releasing anger. Would you like to give yourself a good shake or a kick or whatever else? Just do what you need to do to express any anger at yourself. Sometimes we have unresolved anger because we're not measuring up to our expectations. Whatever comes to you, do it. This is not nice, but it's getting it up and out, unclogged. And go for it. Okay, if you've mucked up, you haven't measured up, do what you need to do to yourself. Okay. Now, will you give your other self a chance to respond? Is that okay? You've had a word, and that part of you has had to listen. Now I'm going to ask the truth, the Spirit of Truth and unconditional love. Look at that part of you now and listen under the guidance of truth. What would that other part of them, of themselves, say back? Now look at that part of you. I know this sounds like childish stuff, but it is unbelievably powerful. Look at that part of you and listen to that part of you. Look at it and feel what you feel. Often it turns to compassion. If it's been hatred, it turns to compassion once you've expressed your feelings. And if you can, become united with it. Allow the Spirit of Truth and love and wisdom to stand between you and your weaker self, your failure, useless part of you, or any part of you that you don't like. Feel what it feels like. See if there's a sense of change to how you felt about yourself. See if there's any softening. And then I'm going to ask the Spirit of Truth and wisdom and unconditional love, is there any other insight to how you see them? Just be aware of how He, wisdom, who created you, and unconditional love, sees you. Listen. Feel what that feels like. And if you can, and if it's life-giving, and it changed for the better, hold on to it, because that is from the One, that is the truth, that is from your Creator, that's what you live from. And then you can be united, then your relationship with yourself, your Creator and others will change profoundly. When you are united with yourself and you forgive yourself. Just do that now and let go of the past. I don't know, I just get an image of some of you being invited to give yourself a hug. You know, if that's appropriate, do that in your mind's eye. It's what you're doing is allowing unconditional love to flow through you. Okay, so I draw you back into the room. If you can come back into the room and stay with what was good and life-giving. But if something else opened up to you, the team here later, to help you, please do not go out that door. We have done this for years and we can help you break through into the light, into the truth, to a place where you feel so different, from where you can really transform relationships. Okay. Often people come out and they look like they've had a sleep, or they're just looking, because you go into another space, some of you. Some of you may not have been able to do it. Some of you may have resisted it. It's okay. Resistance is normal, but it usually creates tension, which only creates disease, ultimately. I would suggest you give it up. And just let's play with this, you know, and play with this lightly and gently for the good of all. So anyone feeling a little bit different? Anyone get an insight? Put your hand up. Good. Do you feel like there's a bit of unclogging there?
Yes.
Ah, a lot of unclogging. So now you can read the book, and you can read the other little booklet on healthy relationships, because they're all the tips and tools. How can you hear those when you're divided against yourself? Do you know what I mean? And only part of you does it, and the other part of it's part of you's been dragged along like a ball and chain. Hey? You get that, don't you? Does that feel a little different though? Anyway, that shift, good. Okay, so who is, in your second relationship, who is it for you that is a higher power? Who is God? Who is Jesus? What is it? What is your language that you feel? And this, I want you to listen. What is it that you could relate to as a helper all the time that you actually have inside of you, but the language that you can ask for at any moment, at any time when you're having trouble with relationships, or you have no idea what to do, or you can just enjoy this sense of friendship with a sense of presence, which is just beautiful. What is the name? Is it presence, light, truth, justice, love? Just stop for a second and let it come to you. What do you feel comfortable with?
Talking to myself.
Okay, so what we do when we talk to ourselves, we need to also listen. So when we talk to ourselves, all we do is can go around in circles, so it's good then to say, open my ears so I can listen to your truth. Even if you open up a beautiful book that you're reflecting on, you'll find that word will speak to your heart. It'll bring life. It could be the Bible, it could be a reflective book, it could be a novel, it'll speak. All you have to do is be open to listening. Who's here is open to listening? Yay, a few of you are. If you're not open, what can you do? At least you're taking on a little, but maybe one thing from today. Because you do need to be open. If you're open, you become pliable and you learn what's happening. So it's then developing this relation. And I remember years ago, I knelt down 30 odd years ago when I was really struggling with relationships. And I knelt down and I said, as far as I'm concerned, if you do exist, you're an awful long way away and there's this great big brick wall between us. Anyone feel like that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. However, what I did was, I asked. And all of you have got a voice, or most of you do, and I hope every part of you has. And you can ask. So I asked. I said, if you do exist, and you are wisdom and love, I need some help and some wisdom and some guidance, because I don't want this to keep happening. I want this to change. Anyone here want change in their relationships?
Absolutely.
If you want change and you acknowledge it, it will happen. If you don't want to and you're resisting, you're guarded and protected, you just need to acknowledge that, and then all of a sudden you'll soften and give it a go. In my case, those bricks came down bit by bit. They were all the things that were clogging me, that we've already just dealt with. Some of them we've dealt with. However, after that, my relationship started to change. Doors started opening, as it will with you if you ask. Then my relationships at home began to change. But I had to learn some tools. I had to learn about other people's space. If you want to have a good relationship with someone else, first of all, don't rely on them to fulfill you. It's unfair, unjust, and it will never last for long anyway. It's constantly in flux. Are they the same all the time, or do they change? You fall in and out of love. At work, your boss likes you, then he doesn't like you. It's constantly change. How many people relate to that? So if you rely on that, you're going to be tired, and you're going to be your whole being is going to be constantly like this. Do you want to be like that at the end of someone else's, putting you all over the place? You've got it. Will you let them go? Yes. You let it go, the job, the person, the situation. And I was put in many crises. I mean, my daughter who was going to die. It was in my face where I had a choice. But it took me 3 years to finally let go. And then peace came, and within 2 weeks she turned around. And that was profound. And that's not just one story. There's so many stories in the book. So don't you want that? How many people want to be unstuck? Okay, so you respect other people's space. You let them go. I release you from fulfilling my need, so I won't be like that lady before, as I talked about it, so I won't be alone. I'm no longer going to expect things from you. I hope for them, but don't expect them. Anyone expect things from other people? Give it up. You just feel it. We did it in another seminar. It's heavy. Drop it and just take on the spirit of hope. And with his help, that unity, the power, okay, I can't, but you can, and show me what to do. You're working with somebody, in union with somebody, in that relationship. But you've got to learn about their space, letting them go, that's respecting them. When my daughters in their teenage years, at 16 to 18, anyone here experienced that teenagers won't listen?
So 96.
Okay, so I went back to, because I had begun to develop a relationship and I just trusted that there was someone besides me that had wisdom that I could, come and unload and then just listen. I learned a vital question. Do you know what the question is? To develop respect for them, respect so they will listen, respect for yourself. Do you know what that question is? No, I didn't either. And do you know what it is? This stuff is so simple, but it so profoundly changes. I began to say, when they were talking or sharing, I'd say to them, it was a question. Remember, questions are so important to develop healthy relationships. Would you like me to comment on what you've said? What does that do? It gives them a
choice
and a voice. And then if you really want a healthy relationship, listen to it. Don't struggle with it. Don't battle with it. Listen to it. Give it some space so they know that they're heard, even if it's rubbish. Doesn't matter. It's like you, that they're getting unclogged as they talk. Just see them as getting unclogged. Once you get that they're getting unclogged, when people are carrying on in front of you, just let them get unclogged and stand there. Don't get in it. And then after me, I used to walk away totally frustrated, of course. You go, okay, over to you. At least I had somewhere to pass them over to you. And they said to me years later, oh, my gosh, Mum, we now both have discussed what we got up to and what we did, and we're so grateful that you prayed for us. I had nothing, and I was at peace, rather than full of anxiety, fear, and control, which would only separate us, and kids usually go and live in another country. Okay? Now we're really close. After 2 years, the results of me asking that question were, one day one of them came to me and shared a story, and I said the usual, would you like me to say anything? Actually, no, I didn't even have to ask. She said, would you tell me what to do? What would you do? I went, yes! I've lasted 2 years. 2 years. Where I took responsibility for me and I went back to the source of wisdom and love and came to empty and waited and waited and waited. And I had developed respect. They respected me enough to come back and ask. They wanted to hear what I had to say. Don't you reckon that's big? For me it was huge after 2 years. Anyone else like that in their lives? Seriously? You know what to ask the question. Would you like me to say anything? Can I make a comment? And in the case of sacred space, the other thing is I used to rush in, all excited about stuff. Oh gosh, if you could see me a few years ago. And they'd be watching television and I'm going, bloody, 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 blah. And they would say, oh, here she comes again. It's me. And I had to learn their response and their reaction was not respecting them at all. It was closing the door in our relationship. So I learned to say, wait and ask, when's a good time? I'd like to share something would you like to hear something? First of all, I asked, would you like to hear something that I find really exciting? And I used to get a no sometimes, and then sometimes we'd make a time Do you see the order in the relationship? Simple, simple tools. And so many other tools in the book, and so many other tools in the pamphlet on transforming relationships. I've probably... What do you do with conflict? Okay, when you've got someone, I've got to finish on this because I think I've given you enough, and there's so much that I can't say today because there's just not enough time, and I do not want to give you indigestion. So, with conflict, what do you do when you're in conflict? Now, what I've learnt with that is, I used to be drawn into conflict, or people would go in there and then I would react. The other day I met a friend I've known for years, and she has quite a story. And she said to me, thank you, thank you, thank you. She said, I am no longer reacting to what my children are saying. That's big, because she said, I'm pausing. And she said, I'm responding from my perspective. Rather than going at them, she's giving her perspective. I used to have someone who used to pull me into the ring and tear me apart. I didn't know what to do with all sorts of topics, and I've learned over the years what I do is ask questions again. I just say, look, I'm happy to hear your perspective and what you want to say, but would you be happy, would you be willing, not happy probably, willing to listen to what I have to say? Otherwise it's pointless, we're not having a conversation. Do you hear? And no one interrupts, no one cuts anyone off, no one judges, condemns and starts screaming. That's what you call being out of control. And when you're with the Spirit of Truth and unconditional love, it gives you a gift. It's called self-control. And I didn't have it a long while ago, so I asked for it. I just said, please stop me and give me the spirit of self-control before, so that I can respond rather than reacting. And I used to react years ago. I'm confessing here. I would be such a goody two-shoes. I'd push things down and not deal with them. And I reckon you really need to deal with yourself first, and then ask wisdom if you need to deal with the other person. I didn't do any of that. So it would build, and then someone would just say something, and it would just be a tiny thing. It'd be the last straw on a bonfire, and I would explode. And the person I exploded over, and it happened a few times, said to me, came back and he said to me, he said, you were like a blowtorch. And I went, oh my gosh. I believe what I said was true and right, but was it inappropriately delivered? Is anyone going to listen to you when you deliver it with so much anger? You can do what you did in that earlier conflict, three-way exercise. Bring the person into your mind, tell them what you're feeling. If you need to express your anger so it's up and out, and then get their perspective and get wisdom's perspective, three-way perspective. That diffuses everything, and then, and only when you're settled, do you go and speak to people. If you go and you're unresolved, you're going to get conflict. Conflict attracts conflict. Anger attracts anger. You attract whatever inside of you. That's why why my relationships have now changed, because I've taken responsibility to deal with myself. And I've got the tools to deal with conflict. Do you find that exciting? Next time you get a conflict, you can ask those two questions. What do you ask? Seriously. Would you, yeah, I'm happy to listen to you, but would you be willing to also listen to me? So we can have a conversation, it's two-way. Otherwise it's pointless a lot of the time, isn't it? And you only get angry. I'm going to finish on that note because I think that's enough. I haven't even looked at my notes, but that's okay. I believe what I've said is enough. Is it enough for you to take home? Is there one thing today that you get from this? What is the thing that stands out for you that you can apply to yourself or your relationships? Or maybe, like me, you had to get that big ball down, you know? I don't know. What is it that stood out to you?
A couple of things. Can I say? Yes.
Two things stood out to this lady.
Would you like to comment on what you say?
So asking the question, would you like me to comment? Yeah. Rather than coming in and being God in other people's lives and being the saviour and whatever, and then you become the victim. Okay, well done. And what's the other
And
thing?
the other one is I can be right in all the things I say, but it's wrongly delivered.
Okay, so it's the way you deliver things. You can be right in what you say to people, and what you're saying is correct. But if you deliver it with a lot of anger and resentment and bitterness, no one's going to hear it. So you need to go back and deal with yourself. You know how to deal with that by bringing yourself into your mind's eye, under the guidance of wisdom. Or you can just go and talk about it. I used to take time. I used to sit in the chair and say, I'm not moving till you do something with me. Because I used to be so shut off, so irritable and so whatever. I had attitude. Not a good attitude. And I needed to deal with me. So if you've got a bad attitude, you need to deal with you. Anyone willing to do that after today?
Yes.
Seriously. It's a decision. And when you make that decision, and I made that decision, my life began to change. But it's a journey to wholeness. So enjoy it. Have an adventure. Try one tool from today. Take that one thing that stands out and begin to try and love yourself, even in your mistakes, that you're just a child learning in the universe. That unconditional love you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.